Real quick, make sure you follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is in the description, or the link, I should say, is in the description. My handle is at Jackson Kruger, so make sure you follow me there. Say hello, and anyways, back to your regulars. All right, so let's talk about Carson Wentz for a second. He's an interesting player, right? He's someone who we're all interested in seeing how he's going to do in a new uniform in 2021, back with Frank Reich. Unfortunately, he is injured to start the season. We still don't know exactly how long the injury will be. Seems like the timetable is anywhere from 1 week to half of the season, which is unfortunate for sure. But anyways, I want to talk about him though, and still just talk about what could potentially go right for him, because there's some interesting stats to talk about. And the main thing I want to talk about with him is going to be his passer rating under pressure. So, this is a stat that I've talked about a lot, where there seems to be a ton of variance between, a good season of passer rating under pressure and a bad season, and even a ton of variance with a single player. So, for example, for Carson Wentz, his first year, in 2016, his passer rating under pressure was 32.8, which is insanely low. But then it shot up to the next 3 years. His passer rating under pressure was 81.7, 76.9, and 78.4. That's way towards the top of the league. That's actually a bit above where guys tend to stay at, so there's probably a little bit of luck involved. It's probably a little bit lower than that. And then last year, it dropped down to 48.6. And if you're a believer in the fact that this is, whether it's luck or it's just your teammates are the ones who control it, there's some sort of other variable. If he had an average season of passer rating under pressure, it would have been a 63.7 passer rating as opposed to the 48.6, which is a bit of an upgrade. So is that just the reason why he had a bad season? He just got unlucky? Well, no, of course not. For one thing, passer rating under pressure isn't entirely luck. There is some skill involved there. Now, I would suspect that next season with the Colts, it'll probably go back to, a mid-60s passer rating under pressure. That would be a logical guess. But again, his entire, every stat he had completely fell off a cliff. So just because there's one stat, which is a specific stat that tends to have a lot of variance, it's possible he just got worse, and this is just one example of it. Not to mention, even if he had an average season of passer rating under pressure, it wouldn't have completely changed things. So, in reality, if you're looking at just regular passer rating, he was 34th in the NFL. The only qualified player who was worse than him was Sam Darnold. So second worst in the NFL, which was 34th. If he had an average passer rating under pressure season, he would have had a total passer rating of 77.1 instead of 72.8, which is a jump, but, it's not a massive jump. He would have just been 31st in the NFL. And in fact, if he had the passer rating under pressure of those 3 years, that 3 year stretch I talked about where he was great at that, his total passer rating would have been 81.5 instead of 72.8. So again, a sizable jump, but that would have still made him 29th in the NFL. There's other issues here. So I wanted to talk about that because I do think it's, okay, there's a bit of potentially some luck involved. There's a lot of skill involved as well, and that's something I want to talk about. However, I don't know if it's skill from Carson Wentz. I'm going to be making some excuses for Carson Wentz in this video. I think it's fair to do so. One interesting stat I saw as well is this one. So you look at the number on the right is just his passer rating, and it's under play action. His passer rating was 68.8, but with no play action, it was 74.4. Now, it does happen where a guy has a better passer rating when there's no play action than when there is play action, but it is very rare, and it's especially rare when you're talking about a guy whose passer rating was so low to begin with. This stat also jumped out at me, which is this is his passer rating through, where he's throwing it. So deep is 20 plus yards, medium is 10 to 20, and short is less than 10, whereas behind the line of scrimmage, obviously behind the line of scrimmage. And if you look, he did okay, short to medium, not great, but still not very good, but at least all right. But deep and behind the line of scrimmage is where he really struggled, and especially deep is the one I want to talk about, because typically the way this works is that your passer rating gets higher the further down the field you throw it, but for some reason his deep ball got a lot worse, which is surprising from Carson Wentz. However, what's more interesting to me is that this was not a fluke. This is not something that randomly happened in 2020, but didn't happen for the rest of his career. In fact, every season he's done less good throwing 20 plus yards than throwing less than 20 yards in terms of, medium. So what does this all mean? Well, to me, what I take away from these numbers, and we will get into film in a second, sorry it's taken so long, but I enjoy talking about the numbers and the film both, so I think it's good. But to me, what this all means is it's saying the real issue with Carson Wentz was not the, deep stuff, because he's never been great at the deep stuff. To me, the thing I want to take a look at is why did he have some issues sort of in that medium range, which is where he usually thrived. So like his passer rating in his MVP candidate season was 130 through that 10 to 20 range. So why didn't it have success in 2020? And I don't know how much of it I put the blame on him for. So let's start off with a play like this. I want to show that, this is really the key thing that he has done well throughout his career is something like this. It's zone coverage he's going up against, and there's going to be a route over the middle that will eventually get into a gap in coverage, and watch what happens. So Wentz takes this snap, he is going to make this throw, and look, it's just a beautiful throw, perfectly accurate. It was, a tough catch because of the contact, but that's a catch that receivers can make, and that was a really good throw from Carson Wentz, and that's what he's been able to do throughout his whole career, and he continued to do it last season at times, for sure. But one of the biggest issues is something like this. It's, first, it's receivers just not getting open in general, but then even when they would get open, there'd be things like this. It's going to be a quick route against man coverage on a 3rd down and 2. This is the route you want to work. You really need it to work, quite frankly. And when Wentz takes the snap, so there is going to be an opening right here, and this is going to be a perfect throw. This, quite frankly, has to be a catch. However, it is not going to be a catch. So just little things like that. I'm not saying their biggest issue was dropping passes, but their biggest issue for Philadelphia, it absolutely was just not being able to get open and have good wide receiver play in general. That was a bigger issue than Carson Wentz was last year. One more thing I want to talk about is this. So there's a narrative that is somewhat true. It's not a false narrative that a big issue with the Eagles last year was Carson Wentz trying to play hero ball. And listen, we've all seen clips of Wentz trying to do too much, causing a fumble, or throwing the ball to the wrong team, or him trying to fight through a defender, holding the ball with one hand when he's getting sacked by 3 guys. It's like, just go down. We know that's a real thing with Wentz. But again, it's been a thing of Wentz his whole career. And what we're trying to figure out here is not what are the pros and cons of Carson Wentz. It's what has been the issue with Carson Wentz this season. And a play like this, I think, is a huge issue. So watch what's going to happen. So it's man coverage, cover 2 man, and just watch Carson Wentz. So he's going to take the snap right here, and unfortunately, we can't really see how these routes end up because there's no all 22 footage. Again, no clue when that's coming back. Hopefully it is coming back because I honestly don't know. We might be stuck with just, this footage for forever. But anyways, Wentz looks downfield and he doesn't like what he sees. So we could just assume that nothing is open. Trust me, back when we had all 22, I watched plenty of Eagles tape, and I can, assure you there were plenty of plays where nothing got open down the field. But now, Wentz doesn't like what he sees. He's not always a guy who still forces it through tight windows and makes decisions he shouldn't. That's not really what he does entirely. Watch him sort of move over, and he's going to instead, take a check down, and it doesn't get the first down. It's a 3rd and 6, and it doesn't work. So Wentz did everything right here, I presume. It's just that the Eagles offense was not able to get it done. You also have something like this, so it's going to be zone coverage, and the way this play works is because there's a play action, you have a receiver who's going to kind of fake as though he's blocking, but then he's going to run over and try to get towards the top of the screen. You hopefully get Cleveland players out of position, and he can get open. That's what you want to have happen. And right when this play starts, you're going to notice that, so it kind of looks like he's open, but he actually isn't. The Cleveland player who I've circled in black is right in front of him. So this is just a throw that you can't really make unless you try to like lob it up. But that's just too risky in the NFL with the talent these guys possess and how quick they can move. You just can't make that decision. So Wentz, in my opinion, is doing the correct thing by going to his second read. But one interesting thing is that this is something I've talked about a lot. A lot of times, sacks and forced fumbles happen because a quarterback's first read isn't open, and now it's taking longer for him to go somewhere else. And as you see, this time, it's not a forced fumble, but it is a disruption, which causes a missed throw, which results in an interception. I don't hate that decision whatsoever. It's an unfortunate, thing that happened that resulted in a pick six. But what is Carson Wentz supposed to do there other than get sacked, which I don't know if he should do when he has an open check down, and just so happens that a blitzing defender who got free untouched was, able to blindside Wentz at the complete wrong time for the Eagles. Again, like I said, I am a little bit making some excuses for Wentz. There absolutely were some real issues that he had in his game that he will need to fix. But I think that if you're looking at what the main differences are, I think the biggest difference that Wentz had last year than previous years was just his receiving core was just god-awful. And the reality is he just didn't have much to work with. And, a bottom five receiving core is going to make bad quarterback play out of any quarterback. I mean, look at Tom Brady. People thought he was washed up when he had a really bad receiving core. And in fact, I know the narrative now is, of course, Tom Brady and the Bucs won a Super Bowl, but only two teams offered Tom Brady a contract. It was the Chargers and the Buccaneers because he looked bad without good wide receivers. That's a very real thing. Now, I don't know how good the Colts wide receivers are, but anything is going to be an upgrade from what the Eagles had last year. It was actually a popular narrative 2 years ago in 2019 that Carson Wentz drug a horrible team to the postseason, and look at what he can do with no talent around him. And the talent wasn't great around him, but if we use Pro Football Focus as a baseline, again, I know people don't love Pro Football Focus. I think they're pretty good, but they're at least something you can point to. In 2019, they had the 21st best receiving core, whereas last year they were 32nd. So you have an 11 spot decline, which of course, that's just a huge difference. At least with 21st, you can live with that. There's guys who are getting open to some degree. And I think that for the Colts, you just hope you have that kind of receiving core. You hope that Wentz is back healthy, and you hope that Frank Reich can scheme guys open better than the Eagles were able to do last year. And I think all those things are possible. I really do. I don't think Carson Wentz is washed at this point. I don't. I think that the way I view it is in the past 4 seasons, Wentz has had 3 really good years and 1 really bad year. I would bank on the fact that he's going to have a really good year, then a really bad year. But, it's certainly a risk, which is why, the Eagles got rid of him. But it's an interesting situation. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Probably going to be a bit of a longer video due to the time I spent talking about the stats. But I had fun with it. Hope you guys did as well. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.